Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lucky Stone and Grandpa Brian talking about philosophy. Doesn't matter. I had a whole theme that I used for titles before. Now I've lost that. I don't know how, but it doesn't matter. We're all good. And now I've just put myself on. There we go. I have another computer to watch the chat, and unfortunately, I forgot to turn the sound off. Good for me. Good professional. Either way, we're good. So, Grandpa Brian, how was your winter holidays? How was your Christmas time?
It was good, spend time with family and friends. Got to see my daughter and grandson and, just relax as much as I could.
That's important. This time of year, relaxing is sometimes you go, and you got to learn to relax, especially this time of year.
Yeah. How was your holidays?
It was interesting because of my job. Sometimes I have to work, or depending on the workload, because I'm kind of like an overseer. And on Tuesday, they said, don't have to come in Tuesday. Don't worry about it. And so I ran an hour and a half to Western Mass and went to what I thought was going to be a ghost tour because it was an old haunted mansion. But instead of a ghost tour, it was an author reading 4 stories, not written by him, but written 100 years ago about ghost stories of Christmas time. And I had a flannel shirt on. I was okay. But these people were dressed to the nines. They were, ties and done with 3-piece suits. And I'm like in my, and of course the author, he's just in a, what is it, one of those linen shirts. So he wasn't dressed up either. So before the show, I'm like, I feel a little underdressed. And he laughed and he goes, they do that around here. So it was something that they weren't at all poo-pooing me at all. They were really nice because after the 2 hours of stories, they left the mansion bottom floor open to talk and hang out with people. And they were, sort of serving wine. And I wasn't about to drink because I had another hour and a half drive home. But long story short, I should slow down a little bit because I'm talking too fast. But sometimes you put yourself in a new situation, and even if you're not a social person, you can be the social person just by standing there and listening to people talk. And that's what I did a lot of, these people I didn't know. I was there alone. But rather than saying, oh, I'm here alone, I'm going to hide in the corner, I just stood around and just talked to people about the architecture and about different things. And then it led into conversations. And that's when, again, sometimes Christmas time is about meeting new people and being able to listen to people's stories.
Yep.
And that was what I learned, because I was expecting a ghost tour. Instead, I got 2 hours of a guy reading stories. But he's a really nice guy. He has his own books, but he didn't read his own stories because it was basically, I guess, a couple hundred years ago, people would get together and they would tell ghost stories. It wasn't Halloween was the ghost story time. It was the Christmas time, the ghost story time. At least that's when, maybe a couple hundred years ago. I'm not sure, but that's what he said. And he was reading some of their stories, and they were spooky. They were interesting. It was fun to hang out with new people. That's to be the truth. It was fun to hang out with new people in a place that I like, the Berkshires, because to me, I can go there and hike and do whatever I want. And the people there are all very nice. There's no real political agenda. It's all just people hanging out and talking. There's co-ops, and there's a food bank, which is available to everyone. And it's not abused. So it's an area that is almost utopian in a way. And maybe from my view, because I only get to go there for a couple hours a couple hours every few months. But again, I love it there.
Awesome.
So the story, the heart of the theme of today's show is, The Hidden Truth of Christmas by Bill Donahue. And you introduced me to him. He passed away a few years ago. but he has all these tapes and all these videos of him talking about his theories. And you were telling me a lot of interesting stuff that you got from it. And basically it started with the birth, right?
That was actually probably like the third or fourth video I watched of his.
Okay.
But I thought it was pretty interesting when I watched it, and then, you know, thinking about Christmas and the birth of Jesus.
Right.
He kind of breaks down the Bible like I've never seen someone break it down before. I know a few weeks ago when we were discussing that the parables were basically riddles. Well, also, it's a hidden code. And once you can start deciphering that code and get the key words of what he's actually trying to, you know, Jesus was trying to say, then you actually are deciphering exactly. Like I told my mom a few weeks ago, I was like, you know, when you're reading the Bible, when you're reading it, you actually got to try to read what's between the lines, what's not there. And he does a great job explaining what's not there. Like when he's talking directions like north, south, east, and west, everything is from looking to the north. So when he is talking about the west, he is talking about the left side of the brain. If he says something about the east, he is talking about the right side of the brain. Just like prayer, when they're talking about prayer in there, they couldn't say meditation. And that's another one of the codes in the Bible. So anytime that they're talking about prayer, they're actually really talking about meditation.
Yes. And was it the west is the left side of the brain? And that's
Correct.
and the west is that the higher self, and the right is it's the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, right is your higher self, and left is our
Physical.
general thinking side, where all of our thoughts and just it's basically chaotic thought in the left side of the brain.
Yes, and that's because they kind of talk about like we talk about the 3D versus now, which is everyone talks about 3D, and that's kind of the physical. The 3D is the left side of the brain. I don't know why I'm having little hiccups in my brain. That's fine. It's my brain. But again, it is fascinating how he was talking about connecting with your higher self, and then of course the birth of Jesus, and about the stable, the stable, the virgin. All those are symbols of the physical mind, the body. It was fascinating.
And we're going to get into a little bit of that tonight. That hopefully people kind of understand when it's talking about the nativity scene and the birth of Jesus, is actually really all about you and how your thoughts and body react.
Yes, exactly. So where do you want to start?
Do you want to start with the nativity scene?
It's as good as any. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So, you know, when they get to Bethlehem, they say the inn was crowded.
Yes.
So that's why they had to go out to the stable for the birth. So we'll start there. The end is the representation of your left side of your brain, because it's always busy, always thinking, always going. Where the stable is the quiet side of your brain. That is the right side, because you rarely get over to the right. And that's what a lot of his teachings is trying to teach, is to get into that right side of the brain, because that's where the Christ consciousness is. So we know the stable is basically the quiet place for the human body. The shepherds is basically us watching over our own thoughts, because they watched over the birth of Jesus. So that's basically a representation of us watching over our own thoughts. There again, the wise men, they came from the east. All your wisdom is in the right side of the brain. That's what it's telling you right there. The right side, just like there's no when he says cast your nets to the right when you're fishing. It's telling you to go into the right side of the brain. When they say Jesus was seated at the right hand of the Father. Why? Because he was always in this side of the brain. That's where your Christ consciousness is on the right side of the brain. So that when you start seeing those symbologies, when they're saying right, they're talking about the right side of the brain to go into. So the animals there, they're the representation of your physical nature. You know, what we basically do. The virgin is basically the pure conscious thought. And that's what we're actually probably trying to get to, is that pure conscious thought. The star is, that's basically like the light shining down through you into your pineal gland and through your chakras. And I think that's about all, except for, of course, you have Joseph and Mary in there, but he never explained what they actually represented in the nativity scene. It's just basically all the other things that surround the birth of Jesus.
Yeah, there's a lot to that also, about God being the Father and also the Son. And he was talking about that at one point, but again, that got a little complicated, because it's about, although Joseph was his physical father, God manifested himself through Mary, and it is interesting. It at the time made perfect sense to them, because Joseph was the physical father while God was the spiritual father, and together, they were one in Jesus. And at one point he says, you can never be Jesus, but we can all be Christ. And it's all about taping connection to the star above us, because the star is always available. It's not just available at his birth. It was physical because he was born. The star was illuminated, but it's always there for all of us when we're ready to connect to it. That kind of thing. I know he mentioned that in one of his lectures. It was fascinating, though. I mean, there's more to it. I'm really truncating and taking really crib notes with, it's just taking a lot of liberties to what he was saying, because he went a lot more into it, a lot of more depth into it. But again, we're discussing this as an introduction sort of thing anyway, so others can look into him. I am going to reference his channel, because he does have a channel that they do post some of his old lectures on a YouTube website, and I'm going to post that to my description. I'm also going to post the Spotify or whatever. There are podcasts. I'm going to post a podcast too, and there's actually a website dedicated to him too. All this can become everyone. We're just going to give you the surface level for others to go in and study further.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like I said, once you start really realizing what he's teaching, he wasn't part of any religion. He kind of started his own little church, and it was real small, but it wasn't about the control and how religion is today. He was actually trying to teach people the true meaning of everything that was in the Bible. I mean, as far as people I know that know the Bible, the man was so knowledgeable about it. I mean, he didn't even have to look at it. He can just rattle off Matthew 20:17. I mean, he just knew exactly what it was saying.
Yeah, exactly. And he could quote from it, and he could extrapolate from it. And he said something that blew my mind. He said that it's there for you to read the Bible for yourself, not for you to ask someone to translate it for you, because you can see the words. And yes, this is an allegory, this is a parable, this is a story, but all the parts are there for you to understand if you stop and let yourself connect it to your higher self, not ask someone else, a priest or a lecturer or someone else to tell you what this means, but for you to stop. And he's going to give you the pieces, the keys, in order to how to read it. But again, it's all into your power to read it for yourself. And that's what he kept doing off and on. Read it for yourself. And I'm just going to give you a suggestion. You're to look at it and read these things for yourself, and don't just trust one Bible. He mentioned to grab 100-year-old Bible, and I'm going to really mess this up, but Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were represented by different faces. I can't remember who was who, but one was an eagle, one was a lion, one was a man, and there was 4 faces. Ram. And these were supposed to be the people who wrote the Bible, but each of those faces are zodiac signs. And he went into that, explained that, yes, the original Bible was connected to the zodiac. There wasn't only, it's occult, it's scary. There's a connection there. And he was taking all the connections and introducing us to them, which is actually, he was just introducing for us to take the lead and look into ourselves.
I'm a firm believer that everything is connected, even the stars and us, and like you said, the Bible is connected to the stars. I do know Moses was an astrologer. I'm sure a couple of the disciples were probably astrologers, because everything that almost happens on Earth, it plays out in the stars first.
I mean, that's what the original 3 wise men, or call it 3 kings, depending on how you read it. They followed a star. They were supposedly, astrologers. They understood the stars. They wouldn't have been there if they didn't study the stars. So the whole basis of the nativity scene is based on astrology, and it's fascinating. And it's right there. It's not him making anything up. He's just like, here are the facts. I'm going to connect in for you. But again, here are the pieces for you to also look at and connect for yourselves. But when you go to church, we go into the father, the priest, they tell us what this all means. They tell us what we're supposed to think. And he's saying, yes, it's all right here for you to look in yourself. And that's a different idea that I wish more churches would do that, or maybe they do, and we just don't see it right now because, maybe we're just sheltered from the better churches. I don't know. But again, it is interesting, when there's a balance between the two.
Yeah, well, you go to churches and everything in churches is all external. Everything that he teaches from the Bible, it's all internal. It's about going inside yourself, not external. And that's what I think the biggest point that he was trying to get across, that if you go inside in meditation, because I know a lot of people meditate, but if you're not clearing your mind when you meditate, quieting the left side to be able to access all the knowledge in the right side, you're not going to get there. Mm-hmm. I know, like when people pray, you're really not going into meditation because you're praying and you're thinking of what you're wanting to pray about. So you're still in that left side of the brain. It's only when you are able to really quiet all that chaos down to where you can access the right side of the brain and then get into all that. All that knowledge is inside of us. It's just us quieting ourselves down enough to access that knowledge that's sitting in our brain.
Yes, and that's I mean, we're given prayers to say, I do affirmations, and all these are to get you to that point. But when you are in the meditation state, it is to clear the mind. Yes, you can say the affirmations and be in meditation state, but that is not the end result. That is to get you into the peaceful, the meditations, the prayers are to get you in the peaceful state so that you can connect to the quiet part of your brain and to connect to the Christ consciousness. But it's fascinating. That's the truth. At the end of the day, liberating us to say, this is all under my control. This is under my power. That if I want to understand Jesus, if I want to understand the Christ consciousness, the church was good to get me to where I am now, but it's now my opportunity, my responsibility to take myself the rest of the way. I'm not saying anything negative about the church, although, there's a lot there. My favorite thing was every time that Jesus went to a church, he was always mad and smashing things.
Yeah, he was a rebel. I mean, he wasn't, a lot of people think, because they don't talk about that a lot in the Bible, but like you said, every time he went to a church, synagogue, or anything like that, he was angry with what was going on inside there. He's like, you guys aren't treating this place with respect. This is God's place, and look how you're treating it. And that angered him.
And rightly so.
But, that's the human side coming out in him. I mean, he was here, and he was one of the most spiritual people that ever walked this earth. But then again, he was also human. And, even though he was probably in the right side of the brain most of the time, there was them times where, he had to go to that left side of the brain. It's like, okay, now it's time to, do what I need to do to get people to realize that what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, it was. It does go to, he was empowering everyone at a time when the church was hand in hand with the government.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was empowering the people, which made him a rebel, because at the time, church and state were one and one. I mean, they were just, that was it,
Mm-hmm.
Although at the time the Hebrews were kind of rebels in themselves towards the Romans, that wasn't at that time. They were trying to link up because, Herod was a hand-picked Jew for the Israelites, and it was questioned whether he was actually Jewish. But again, he was representing the Hebrews in Jerusalem, and he was hand in hand with the Romans, and he was hand-picked. So all this, of course, Pontius Pilate was a Roman, and all these people. But again, the Philistines were Philistines. No, the Pharisees were representative of the church, but they were, they were in the pocket of the government, of the Roman government. They didn't want anyone to know that, but it was obvious there. And, Jesus was empowering the people to think for themselves. And that wasn't a good thing for the Romans or for the Pharisees.
Correct. Because, like you said, the Pharisees, they were tied to the government and also to religion. It was like, how I want to put it, like an archbishop.
Oh, yeah.
How it's like they're like in between the parishes and the Vatican. So the Pharisees were like between the Roman Church and the Hebrews.
Absolutely, yes. And it is all about money. And even today, back then it was about money, and now it's about money. It's about having control of the people. I mean, that's what happened, where Mary and Joseph had to, go to Bethlehem. No, he was born in Bethlehem, but Mary and Joseph had to go to his home because the Romans wanted to have a census, and it was all government controlled, and they had to go someplace, and they were following the rules, and it was required to follow the rules.
Yeah, it wasn't only that; it was also to pay taxes too.
Oh yeah, it was all about money too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The government needs their money.
Exactly. So the birth of Jesus.
Yes.
When he broke that down, that was really eye opening. So and how he broke it down, that the birth actually happens inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, how he explained it was the feminine energy is down in the root chakra, because that's where you're connected to the feminine energy and Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I know a lot of people know what the Kundalini is. So basically, that energy is following around the spine, around all the chakras, and coming up into the pineal gland, and then giving birth to the right side, which is the Christ consciousness. So when you allow that feminine energy to come up through you like that and go into the pineal gland and into the brain, that's what's going to help you give birth to the Christ consciousness. Uh, I know a lot of people say that, oh, I live in that Christ consciousness. Well, do you really? Because are you accessing the right side of your brain? Because that's where the Christ consciousness is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in the conscious thought. It's releasing all that conscious thought and getting into the right side of the brain where all the knowledge is.
And that's challenging.
Very challenging. I mean, there's been a couple times where I've done meditations where there was nothing, no thought, no vision in my head. There was nothing, just darkness. And I knew it after those meditations were over that I was actually able to really quiet my conscious thought. But not only that, I was able to quiet my subconscious thought, because my subconscious wasn't giving anything to the conscious thought.
Mm-hmm.
So I've only been able to do it, and it's tough to do that, because that left side's always wanting to. I mean, like, I woke up at 5:30 this morning, went to the bathroom. I laid back down. I could hardly go to sleep because, man, I had all these thoughts just going through my head, boom, 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 boom. So it was hard for me to get back to sleep. It's hard, really hard to quiet that left side of the brain. Really hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes they call it the monkey brain. They call it different things. Yeah, and it does talk a lot. And the balance is listening without listening. You basically, because you can't stop it. I mean, philosophically, Buddha said it's like watching sticks on a river. Some go and they grab the sticks and start pulling them out of the river. But if you just let them pass, and just acknowledge them, they're there, but let them go. It is tough, though, because there's always that need to address them and interact with them. It is challenging. And having that moment of sheer bliss, of clarity, of thought, I've only had it a couple of times myself, honestly, just a clear mind where just total relaxation, nothing in there. But again, you're right.
It's hard.
It's so often it's just, you wake up and your brain's like, oh, should we get up now? Oh, you're tired. You're really tired. How are you going to get all sleep? Oh, how much more time can you sleep? Oh, 2 hours? Oh, maybe 2 hours. Have you set the alarm clock? The alarm clock set, you make sure, those kind of thoughts go in and out. And, of course, you just want to say, shut up. Everything's okay. Yeah. Let me sleep. But of course, that same telling us, trying to get a couple more hours of sleep is the same mind as trying to prevent us from getting that meditation, the clear mind, which is, it's excruciating. It is excruciating. But
yeah,
we practice. That's why we practice. We don't practice to succeed. We practice to continue, because that's the spiritual journey is a journey. It's never a destination. That's one thing that whenever we have these obstacles in our lives, it's an all opportunity to learn, to go, this version of meditation is not working for me right now. I'm going to shift it out. Maybe I need to do some walking meditation and then later lay down into a clear mind meditation. And this is all part of the spiritual journey. That's one thing I want to tell everyone, is that the funny thing about the spiritual journey is you're going to hit a plateau where you're going, I get it. I feel bliss. I feel Christ conscious. I feel good. And then you're going to fall back. And that's fine. That's all part of the journey. We don't finish. We just continue on the journey. And we have to enjoy the journey, not enjoy the stops. The stops are great and all, but again, the journey is more important. Again.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he didn't live every moment of his life in that consciousness. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there was times where the left side, he was thinking about things and, where we're going to go next. What are we going to do? How to speak to the public in parables so they don't know what he's talking about. So I know there was times that he was in the left side of the brain, but he was so able to quiet that mind like that and get into that right side of the brain where the Christ consciousness resides.
Yes. And we all need that. We need that moment of clearing our minds and having that, and just to practice to get there. And we may not succeed every meditation, but the meditations we do succeed at, those are the keys to keep going on the journey.
Yeah, I mean, it took me almost 2 years. It may have been over 2 years before I was able to actually quiet the mind enough to where there was no thought whatsoever.
Yeah, I had the same problem where I had all these all these downloads and all this great, and I thought, oh, the downloads were more important. No, the quiet time was important, which again were rare, but I never quite got that till later when I said, I just had this whole meditation where I just had nothing at all. That's when there was a monk I was talking about, how sometimes in meditation there's nothing there. And he said to me, that's the goal, silly. And I'm like, oh, wait, because, the clear. And the weird thing is that I was in a defeatist thing where I was having meditations where there was nothing. And when he said that, I'm like, oh. And then, of course, that's when I realized the meditation of nothing was the goal, I lost that and started having the other, thoughts in there. And I think that's the funny thing is, like, meditation's like a snake, it's slippery. You can, once you get control of it, it still can move around and get out of control again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even if you were able to do it, almost every time you meditate, you're going to have meditations where you're not going to be able to quiet that left side of the brain because maybe, there might be something bothering you, even though you're not thinking about it, is still affecting that left side of the brain, which is making you think about maybe other things. So, yeah, it's fascinating how hard it is to quiet the mind. But once you get there, it's almost like this was easy because it didn't take no effort to quiet the mind.
Yes, that is the crazy part, where the times when I had the clear mind that were so hard to get to, but the meditation was the easiest to do it. And it's so contradictory, where I try so hard to get the quiet mind, but by the time when I got it before, it was the easiest, and I was so defeated that I was getting nothing, no messages, no nothing. And that's when the monk explained it. No, that's the goal, mister. But again, but it was the easiest thing to do at the time. But now that I'm trying to get it again, it's elusive. But
because again, you're trying, because you're doing it with the conscious thought. Okay, I need to quiet my mind, instead of just going with the flow and letting it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're able to go with the flow and let it happen because you weren't going in with a pre-existing thought of what you want to do. You're just going in and just letting everything go and letting all thought go.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, is that having a notebook next to your bed or next to your whatever, wherever you're going to meditate. What's this? Having it and going, okay, you're meditating and you have those thoughts that are limiting your meditations, that's when you say things I will address after meditation. And that way it becomes less of a obstacle, less of a problem in your meditations. But that's, again, that's what I do. Others might have to find another way to get those silly thoughts out of your head. But again, it's all personal experiences, and what you do with it, it's yours, And that's another thing, is that there's no right meditation. You might need walking meditation, you might need music, you might need chanting. All these are okay, but your goal is to get the clear mind, and how you get there, it's all your journey. So there is no wrong, no matter what anyone tells you the right way to meditate. There is no perfect meditation. It's all your journey, and no one can tell you. They can give you foundations, they can give you ideas, they can give you rocks to help build the foundation of your spiritual building. But again, you have to take responsibility for yourself, which is sometimes tough for a lot of us. How do I do it? Asking, how do I do it? And a lot of times it's like, I can't tell you. I can only give you the pieces, but you have to put the puzzle together. And I don't know what your puzzle even looks like.
Yeah. And I don't know how I do it or did it, but in meditation, I was able to drop my heart rate down to, it was dangerously low because it freaked someone out one time because they were doing Reiki on me. But it was just getting into that so relaxed state. Not only did I relax the mind, I relaxed the whole body to where, and I wasn't even consciously thinking about, trying to drop my heart rate down or my breathing or anything like that. It just happened because I was in such a meditative state. And that could have been one of the times where it was just nothing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Unfortunately, it's tough for the poor Reiki master or the healer, because they like kill them.
Yeah. Oh, so I make a conscious effort now because Heather's like, don't ever do that again. I was like, okay. I said, I didn't realize I was doing it. So I make a conscious effort to make sure my heart rate's up and my breathing's correct. So that way I'm not freaking anybody out that's trying to do Reiki on me.
Yeah, that is a huge step in the spiritual processes. Controlling the breathing is easy for us, but controlling our heartbeat can be challenging for a lot of people. But it's part of the journey, learning to control your heartbeat. And you've mastered, or you've on the way to mastering that. Let's just say that, because I don't want to put any words in your mouth. But again, it's a tough experience to get to, but you've achieved it. I mean, that's wonderful. That's fantastic.
My philosophy is you truly never master anything, because if you mastered it, then that means you're going to stop learning. So
beautiful. That's exactly, yes.
If you don't have that mindset, well, I mastered this. Well, then what is there to learn if you mastered it? That's why, I'm a Reiki master, but there's still a lot I got to learn about Reiki and other healing modalities. The master part of that is just you're able to teach it. But it's not to where I'm ever going to stop learning on how to do it. But like, am I a master of meditation? No, I don't think anyone could ever be a master of meditation, because it, like you said, it's not a destination, it's a journey. So you keep evolving as you keep going.
Yes, and that's, a lot of us need that advice, that we're always evolving as we progress. We might feel that we've learned everything we can about a subject, and then something new will come along, and that's what we need to grasp, that it's all a journey. We're always learning, no matter when we think we master something. Truly we don't, because there's always a new aspect, there's always a new facet to the whole situation.
Yeah, I'm not sure what show it was last year, but I know I did say in one of the shows, the ascension process. It's not a destination. If you're looking for a destination, once you get to that destination, you can always go higher.
Mm-hmm.
The ascension process is a journey. It should never end because you should always keep ascending. If you say, well, I want to get to this level, once you get to that level, guess what? You're going to stop. And you can get higher than that level. So I try to teach people, it's not a destination. It's not a race. It's a journey. Everybody is on their own pace. And if someone's a little bit slower than you, that they're going at their pace, and that's okay. Don't be frustrated with them or anything like that. Just like they shouldn't be frustrated with you or like, why is he progressing faster than I am? It's because everybody's on their own journey. If we were all meant to process together and be at the same decision process together, then we would be like that. But everybody's on their own journey.
I agree. And that's one of the things that a lot of in the spiritual groups, they are sad that their friends are not as enlightened as they are, or they need more enlightened friends. And that's when I shake my head and realize you have to realize that the friends you have them because there's something for you to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're ready, those people, those enlightened people you're searching for, will just pop into your life because you're ready for them. You think you want more enlightened friends, but you have to accept the enlightenment of the friends you already have, even though you don't see them as enlightened. And that's a tough road to hoe right there when you don't stop and go, these lower 3D people, I can't learn anything from them. But the problem is you can learn everything from them because they're on a spiritual path themselves, and they're just different. And you have to accept that and learn to. A lot of times the things we don't like about each other are about the things deep inside us that we don't like about ourselves. And we need to address that and understand them. And that's, a lot of us have a trouble with that. And I agree. I have the same problem where people really aggravate me. And then I got to stop and go, wait, why am I aggravated? What is happening here? What am I hiding from myself that this person is showing? And that's hard to do. That's hard to do, especially when we're in the moment. But yesterday, Andromeda 7 was talking about triggers, and I think that's what Jesus teaches us, is that those triggers we have are part of our growth.
Mm-hmm.
He was huge on that. I mean, he was triggered. I mean, and he was a perfect example of that. And we get triggered and we learn from that. He was triggered and he taught them. He was triggered and he taught them a lesson, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is sometimes we need to adjust our triggers and just go with it.
Yep. And one thing I have learned in my process of ascension, that I definitely got rid of the judgment, because I finally realized everybody's on their own journey, and it's not for me to judge how they're doing their journey or what their journey is. Everybody has a journey, and one thing I tried to teach my mom is you can't keep driving and try to influence someone to go a certain direction, because if you actually influence them to go that direction, maybe they're going to miss something that they were supposed to learn going the path that they were on at that point in time.
Absolutely.
So that's why I try not to meddle or mess, or just accept that everybody's on their own journey. We're all not on the same journey, and you don't want them judging you for the journey that you're on. So why should you judge them for the journey that they are on?
Yeah, that's huge. That is a huge lesson that it goes to a golden rule. treat others how you would like to be treated, or
Yeah.
and that's exactly what it is. It's not don't judge others. It's because we're all on this. We're all working together, and it's about it's not a lecture. It's more of a way of living. That's another thing. A lot of it's, don't judge others. It sounds like a lecture, but it's more of a thought process. Is your freedom of mind, your spiritual path is freed by not judging, and that's hard, especially those who are set in their ways and believe that I've reached the spiritual, plateau. I am enlightened, and these people around me, they're not enlightened enough, and it's like, no, you're missing the point. They're enlightened enough for you. And you have to be acceptable of that and accept them as they accept you. Because, they're still your friends. They're still your family. They're around you. But again, it's all our own journey. And I can't judge someone else for who they judge. I can only look at them and say, just, offer them compassion, help them. They can find the compassion in their life to spread to others.
Yeah. Because if we all came from source, we're all connected, then are you not just judging a different aspect of yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, that's huge. Yes, exactly. Yes. And yeah, we're all a mirror of each other. That's
Exactly.
oof.
So if you're judging someone, you're actually looking in that mirror judging yourself, because what is it that you're judging inside of you that you don't like?
Yeah, and that's one of my biggest things is when I'm quote triggered, is when I have to stop myself and going, why am I being triggered by this? What in me is expressing it? Are they helping me express? How do I find out what is bothering me to figure out how to resolve the situation? Because it's, again, a lot of times my wife was complaining about something, because you never tell her at the time. But again, if your wife is complaining, you listen, no question about it. That's if you're a husband, the first rule of a wife is whenever they're complaining, you sit and you listen with compassion and input their words back at them to say, yes, I'm listening. Don't bring your own algorithms, not algorithms. Don't bring your own stories into it. Let them talk. But again, a lot of times it's like, if that didn't bother you as you claim, you wouldn't be talking about it like this right now. But, so, it doesn't bother. This doesn't bother me. And then they could continue on and on. But again, me as the husband, listen to her saying it doesn't bother me and telling the story is to help her through it. And that's another thing, is that someone is venting to you. You're not there to fix it. You're there to be their sounding board, because eventually, by them speaking it out, they're going to hear their own words and be able to process it better. And you really don't do much, just sit there and listen. But again, sometimes us husbands want to fix things. If you want to fix something for others, the best thing you do is help them fix it themselves, and by listening. But I think that's what, that's what the Catholic Church did really good job of. Is unfortunately the confessional became a place for you to unload your sins. But I think the confessional was there to help people talk about, have someone to talk to them. But it became, it turned upside down and backwards, where it became expressing your sins. But I think the original confessional was a way for people to talk to each other in an unbiased, open place. And I think I think even sometimes back in the old, maybe in primitive times, there were some churches that had that open thing where people could talk to each other, and the confessional wasn't a place to unload all your pains and all the bad things you've done, but we'll be able to talk to each other and free your mind up and able to express yourself. I don't know.
Well, yeah, there actually wasn't a confession until they incorporated the pagans, because that's where they got it from, was the pagans, which it was, you had the midwives, those are the ones that gave birth, you had your healers, and then you had what they called sin eaters. And the sin eaters were the people that actually went and sat with someone when they were dying, and the people could just unload on them, whether it was bad stuff that they needed to just get rid of. Sometimes it was just stories of their families and, you know, all the joys and everything. But, you know, it was just for a way for a person to let things go and talk about before they passed away. So when the Catholic Church incorporated the pagans, because, you know, a lot of the church's holidays are pagan holidays, they incorporated, oh, well, we can take this aspect of the sin eater and now say, okay, hey, now we got a place for you to come and confess your sins. So I don't think it existed before they incorporated the pagans. How I found that out is because I had a lady, we were at a job, and she just come up, started telling me, I'm going through a divorce. My husband met a younger, and I didn't know this lady. Matter of fact, it was a next door neighbor to the house we were working at. And she just came over and unloaded on me. And, you know, I didn't think nothing about it. I just let her talk and say whatever she needed to say. And when the conversation was done, I said, have a good day. And I walked away. And then a friend of mine told me, well, you were a sin eater in the previous life. And I was like, what's that? And then he was telling me about the pagans. What a sin eater did was, you know, sitting with the people that were dying. And he said, that is where the Catholic Church got confession from. I was like, that really makes sense.
It does make a lot of sense, because that's what the church did. They incorporated everything. And I think, honestly, I think the first thing the Catholic Church was still Jesus. I think the story of Jesus Christ, although there wasn't a Jesus, there was a Yahshua or whatever, the Christ consciousness. I think the original thing was a Gnostic offshoot. I mean, they just kind of stole it. Said these guys have too much freedom. We need to incorporate them into I mean, because again, one religion rather than having all those pagan deities. Let's just have it one under one roof, and you know, we can all the money be all rather than going to all the temples, just be one temple that we'll make up and we'll make it the church. But again, I'm just extrapolating ideas that I had that I don't think that the original Christian church was. I think Jesus was a whole different thing that they just grabbed and tied up and made their own ways. Yes, because that's what they did. They made one book with all these books, all these stories. You know, they made one book. These are the ones that we're going to use and destroy the rest of them. It's unfortunate.
Well, they didn't destroy them all, because you have the Nag Hammadi scriptures, which all those were the teachings that Jesus taught the disciples when they were all alone, where he didn't have to talk in parables, where he could just be himself and talk straight out and actually tell them how it was, and this is how it is. And
and there are gonna be more coming out, because I've heard that there are copper scrolls that they can't open because that would destroy them. But now with the computers can scan through them, never open these scrolls up, scan through them and read them, and then produce a 2D image of this rolled up 3D scroll. And this is probably going to be some things that, you know, because the Mary Magdalene gospel, it's in fragments. There are pieces here and there. There are parts that are missing. So maybe some of those are going to be discovered and be able to, okay, in the scroll that we could never open, now we can read it and then we can fill in some of the blanks. I mean, just we might be able to fill a lot of this back in, which would be, you know, just to sheer knowledge wise. Forget the religion. Just to know all this new stuff will be fascinating. I can't wait.
When I first started watching William Donahue, that thought came to my head. I was like, man, wonder if he got a hold of the Nag Hammadi scriptures, what he could extrapolate out of those.
Yes, true. That would have been interesting. That the more he could have, you know, the connections he could have found would have been very interesting.
Yeah, he is a very fascinating. I at least watch one of his videos a day, just because I'm really wanting to learn, you know, coming from a Catholic background, and I know you did the same. Yeah, we were taught certain parts of the Bible, certain aspects of the Bible, but the way he breaks it all down, I know I was talking to Trina there and we were talking about a lot of us know who Jeff Darty is.
Yes.
And that's how I kind of got away from the Catholic Church. But, he let his ego get in the way of a lot of things, and I don't think he really looked at the way that William Donahue did. And I think if he did, I think he would have had a different kind of attitude towards the Bible than what he did.
I think at one point he started to, and then he got on the idea, the Rush Limbaugh, Howard Stern popularity radio thing, where he thought to himself, I need to be more popular, so I need to use the Howard Stern, Rush Limbaugh code, whatever you want to say, because I've watched both of them. I understand them, and different readers do it different ways. But unfortunately, even Howard Stern's not Howard Stern anymore. He's much more pacified, and these not the times to go that way. And unfortunately, that's what happened. And he's lost a lot of his, because he lost his audience because he lost his platform, and that's one of the problems. There's a balancing act. You can express the truth in a way that the algorithm will allow, but you've got to keep changing it up, because at one point his aggressive stature helped. He was getting really popular, and then they cracked down on him, and that's what happened. And they cracked down on me a couple of times and then I fought back, says, hey, which I think the worst thing about cracking down is when they crack down on you, when they say, you're not getting a strike, but we're removing this video, which means you have no way of fighting it because there's no strike, so you can't fight it, but their video's gone anyways. So that was one of my issues. And I learned, whatever they want, I'm going to be on their platform. If I want to continue to be on platform, I'll follow their rules. Thank you, sir. I'll try not to do that again. Because I have no strikes, but I've had a few dozen videos removed and all the same thing. This isn't a strike. We've removed it for terms of service violation. And a lot of my videos that were removed were after 2 or 3 years. And it was just silliness. But again, we cannot complain about what YouTube does, because they have their own rules, and I'm just going to follow their rules. And we haven't violated anything. We were just talking about philosophy, about Jesus. And again, yeah, exactly. That's a good point, is that Bill Doherty's videos are up there. They're available. They're 13 years old. So we can talk about all we want because he's a safe subject.
Right.
That's it. And he fascinates. He also, that's another thing about him. He does talk in a sympathetic manner. He lectures in a compassionate way. He doesn't tell anyone they're wrong. He just tells here are the information I have, and you do as you. And I think we could all learn from that. You're right. Listening to him, he's fascinating, and he does change the narrative. But again, it's not in your face. It's more a discussion. It's more of, this is interesting.
Well, if you notice a lot of the videos, there's probably 20 or 30 people there.
Yep.
It's because a lot of them are, his little Sunday sermons that are an hour long, and there's people there, and they actually got workbooks, and, he has them pull out their Bibles, and then he'll write on his board, okay, now look at it this way. And, and just start explaining out, what the hidden meaning is behind whatever passage it is in the Bible. But the most important thing, and I didn't know it was in the Bible like this many times, but there's probably 5 different references saying that the kingdom of God is inside of you. It's all about going inside of you. And when I talked to my neighbor, I think it was last year, right out here in the cul-de-sac, he called me a sinner. You know, that's just the Protestant in him and everything. And I said, well, I know that I'm a part of God, so it doesn't matter what you think. And he's like, you're not a part of God. You're just a creation of his. And so I just kind of left it at that, knowing, okay, I know I'm a part of God because God's a part of me. We're all connected to him. And like Jesus said so many times, the kingdom of God is inside of you. It's not external, it's internal. So going inside of you is where you're going to find the kingdom of God, not outside, external, at a church and praying.
You're right. It's right there in black and white. I mean, he did tell the Pharisees, "We look in your Bible." He quoted the Psalms. We are all God. You are God. I am God. We're all God. And it's like, and it's something that it takes away their power, and they don't want to take away their power. And that's the problem. Your neighbor, unfortunately, is so addicted to his minister that he surrenders his power to the minister. And yes, the minister is the God to him, because although he would never admit that, he says God is above all this. But again, once you surrender your power is gone. But
Right.
again, the door is open for you to take your power back. We all can take our own power back.
Yeah.
We have to choose it. We have to choose it. And it's a lot of responsibility to be your power.
Yeah. What I think is so hilarious is, like with him, he can recite damn near every passage in the Bible, but he does not have any comprehension on what a lot of it means.
Yeah, it's reciting the words and not understanding the meaning.
Yes.
That happens in every religion, but I mean, it's fascinating, and I think that's the problem and the benefit. The great thing about religion is it shares all this information to us. The problem is it tells us what this information means rather than telling us how to figure it out for ourselves. And that's the most powerful thing we can do, is figure this out for ourselves.
And that's what I like about William Donahue, because he doesn't, preach and tell you. He tries to get you to figure out, okay, here's the key words of this right here. So read it and figure it out for yourself.
Absolutely. And that's the key to all of this, is to try to figure this out for yourself. I am so sorry, everyone in chat, that I thank you all for coming. Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Mary Wins. Oh, thank you, Lori Pure Lover Section. Thank you. Teresa's been here since the beginning, and Lori's been here since the beginning. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate. Oh, Inferno Dragon Z. Thank you. So thank you all for coming. You all, Teresa, Trina Phoenix, you were here too. Thank you, Trina Phoenix, for being here. Thank you all for coming. I supposed to be, when you guys come in, I'm supposed to say hi to you, but I always get these conversations. I love these conversations, and it's kind of like Grandpa Brian and I are having this conversation, and you guys get to witness it. It's just there's so few times that we can actually find others, but again, that's what the internet's for, so we can find each other and be able to talk to each other and open the doors. And we're always opening doors and having new friends in different parts. In it's the great thing about the internet. That's the wonderful thing. That there are problems, there are stifles, there's some censorship, but in the end, if we follow the rules in the right way, we can learn so much.
Yeah. And sorry, everyone, I went in the chat. My internet was down, so I'm going to do the show over my phone. So I wasn't able to be in chat tonight. But, a lot of people say stuff about technology. If we didn't have the technology that we did now, none of us would have ever met. We wouldn't be able to talk on these platforms like the way we do, and be able to share our knowledge with each other. So, technology is somewhat, I think it came at the perfect time when it needed to for us. Like I say, we're entering into the age of Aquarius, which is the age of enlightenment. I think it came along at the perfect time, the internet did, to where it evolved to the point that we are now, to where we can get together on these platforms and teach each other about enlightenment and what we've learned. And then we get to watch and experience what other people learn that maybe we can incorporate into our lives. And I think that's what's so great about these platforms, because we can discuss what we learn and how we do things, and maybe somebody gets something from it, maybe they don't.
Exactly. Elderberry, I didn't say you. Thank you for coming, Elderberry. You're not the third most popular commenter. Thank you so much. Yeah, to me, technology is like my wife with a knife, because she needs the knife to cut the vegetables and make everything good. But every couple months she cuts herself. But again, yeah, it's the necessary, there's the good and the bad, it's not a double-edged sword, because the knife has only got one sharp end. But I also cut myself, and I walked into a store that sells specialty cooking stuff, and I said, do you have a bagel cutter? She goes, yeah, we have it. And then they didn't, no bagel, because those things that hold the bagel, because so often it's not bagels I want to cut, as I like to cut a croissant in half. But sometimes I cut myself, little tiny cuts, no big deal. But again, double-edged sword. I need the knife because I want to cut my croissant, but the other side is that the knife can cause me injury, and there's a balancing act. If I'm careful, I don't have the problem. Technology, if you're careful with technology, you can have everything. But if you fall, sometimes things happen. But it's good. The technology is good for us as long as we know what we're doing. And again, I complain about it sometimes, but in the end, I without it, I'd be nothing. I wouldn't meet you. I wouldn't meet any of these people. I would be stuck at home reading my books.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't know what books I'd be reading, because these interactions have helped me find other books to read. So I wouldn't have found those books, those boxes of books sometimes. That that's the great thing. But so, have anything to sum up this wonderful conversation? We'll probably continue this in the future next week.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just happy to be here and just be able to share what knowledge that I've learned. And I know by the time we talk next week, I'll have learned some more. So I know I'll have more to share by the time next week comes.
And me too. I will be sitting down and probably listening to him talk while doing other things, and then stopping him, because at work I like to listen to videos at work, which he's going to be a great source for that. Something like, it's not really white noise, it's just something to listen to, but I can do work and have him talk, and then I can stop him, and then I can write stuff down rather than driving around. And because he has some mind-blowing things that while driving around, I can remember this, but I'm driving and I have to focus on the road, and I don't know when that time had happened. But again, we learn, we share, we learn from each other, we share with each other. And that's the great thing about not so much my channel, but the group of the people that watch my videos and the videos that I watch. We can talk to each other, and we can disagree, and that's the great thing. We can still disagree and still have a nice conversation. It's not personal. We talk to each other with compassion. We can disagree on something, but with compassion, we can accept each other's points of view, and we can learn and go forward.
Yep, and that's what helps you grow. And I think that's the greatest thing about this group, is that people can come with different opinions, and even though you don't agree with them, you still respect what they said and you let them say it.
Absolutely. That's the truth, that if someone disagrees, we can still listen to them talk and let them have it. And, and it's fine. It's good. They can have their opinion, and we can be okay with that. We don't have to accept it. We can still listen with compassion and not accept it carte blanche. But again, let them have their time to talk to us about it, and not argue with them. Just, yes, I agree. You can have that opinion. Not say, I agree with the opinion. say, I agree that you can have that opinion, and I accept it, and thank you for telling me this, and go on our lives. And it's all beautiful like that.
Because what they're doing basically is speaking their truth, what they believe to be true.
Yep.
And like I said earlier, why, you wouldn't want someone judging you for you speaking your truth and what you believe in. So why would you want to judge or get shitty with somebody for speaking their truth and what they believe in?
Absolutely. 100%. I agree with you totally. Okay, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. I really enjoy. And if you watch us in the future, just at the beginning, but if you watch us in the future, comment, critique, it's all good. I'm open. I'm okay with the thumbs down, but please, if you're gonna put a thumbs down, tell me why, and at least have a conversation. You just give me something, because I'm here to learn. And if you disagree with me and you give me something to me to look up, I'm there. All right. Thank you, Grandpa Brian. Thank you, everyone, for watching. What's next, everybody?